And it's now the time for our interview. We are going to talk to Dr. Edyta Jankiewicz today. She is the Family Ministries and Discipleship Ministries coordinator for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the South Pacific. And she's going to be talking to us a little bit about parenting today. So, Edyta, it's nice to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Our pleasure. So, Edyta, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, one topic that is very important and to my heart, because I always feel that I can learn new things on. I'm a father. I have two beautiful young children, 8 and 5. And one of the big things that is part of our relationship is how can I correct them? How can I discipline them? I don't want to be the kind of father that never says no and just, raises little kids with no boundaries. But I also don't want to be this totalitarian, repressive father that is, shutting their identity out. But it's very hard to find the balance between these two extremes sometimes. So can you talk to us a little bit about what is your perspective? What have you learned in that space?
Yeah. So actually what you've described is like the two extremes of what's known as authoritarian parenting, which is like, you do it my way because I said so. And the other extreme is permissive parenting where, you do whatever you want to do, that's fine. And neither of those is good. There is an alternative where, you have high expectations, but also high support, and that's known as authoritative parenting. And so it sounds like that's what you would like to be able to achieve with your children. And so I just applaud you for recognizing that. And
all right, I like it. Yeah, I like that idea of authoritative. So high expectations, because I want them to be absolutely the best versions of themselves,
Correct.
I want them to be these little disciples of Jesus, who love the Lord, but also are, great people, great contributions for society. But at the same time, you mentioned there's also a high support attached to it. So how does that look like in practice? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah. So I just want to say that the word discipline is actually rooted, the root word is disciple. And most people don't know that. And when you think of disciple, you think of the word learner. And so if you think about your child as a learner, from you as the adult, then it makes it easier to think what discipline actually is. And the number one thing is that discipline must be based on the attachment that you have with your child, because your attachment, your relationship is everything. If you don't have that relationship, then you actually, over the years, you lose your influence, you lose your ability to actually guide your child. So that's the number one thing, is to promote a secure, supportive environment where your child feels safe, understood, and valued. Because kids naturally want to please their caregivers when they feel genuinely cared for. So I would say that's number one. Absolutely number one.
All right. So,
and then, go on.
Yeah, no, yes, no. So, okay. So just taking notes here. So the most important thing is to have that attachment, because if there's no attachment, I believe that the child can say, look, why would you care? You don't even know who I am. You don't spend time with me. Why should I do anything that you're saying here? And I have seen this response, particularly in teenage years, when they are more understanding and they really kind of detach themselves from that.
Yeah, well, kids, like during the teenage years, it's a normal thing. Children begin to, it's known as individuate, become their own persons. And so they kind of begin to move away from the parents. But if you have that attachment, you still have the ability to guide and influence them, even though they're becoming their own persons. So that would be the number one thing that I would say, is be sure that you are doing everything that you can to nurture that attachment with your children, because misbehavior is usually driven by a lack of a sense of feeling loved and cared for and that sense of belonging. So effective discipline must begin by acknowledging and meeting the child's needs for love and connection and safety.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we start with that. We start with that attachment, with that really spending time with the kids. And look, as a father, one of the things that I've learned is that a lot of this spending of time looks like playing with them and just doing activities that they are interested on.
Correct.
What would be the second pillar to that discipline? So how do you say, okay, your discipline is a time out, or we're not going to play so much anymore, or you're going to be how do you what tools can we have in our toolbox to come the point across for this? There's this expectation, this, let's say the expectation is I want you to be respectful and be quiet. We are in an environment where there's no noise, suppose, but the child insists in creating that noise. What do you do? What options do we have?
Yeah. So I would say, number one, you begin by explaining what the expectations are.
Okay.
Like if you let's say you're in a church and you expect your child to be quiet while sitting in the church pew with you, and you've explained that ahead of time, and you've consistently had that expectation, but then one day something goes wrong and the child begins to be noisy. You first want to know why that might be going on, and so maybe go outside and talk to them, because children respond very well to understanding why. And so that would be the first thing, is talking to them, helping them to understand. And then secondly, using gentle guidance rather than force. Often with discipline, it becomes a power struggle between parent and child. And so the idea is meet resistance with care rather than confrontation. And how do you do that? The first thing I would say is, if the child is doing something you don't want them to be doing, try to make eye contact with them. Either, speak their name, make eye contact, smile, and then see if you can actually get a smile back from them. Once you've got their attention, then make your request for what it is that you want them to do. And unfortunately, often when we are wanting to correct our children, we're frustrated. And so it's hard to have that smile on your face.
Because when you said about making eye contact, I was thinking about the stare, like the parent stare, that stare.
I'm not talking about the stare. Yeah, not the stare. See if you can make eye contact, because often kids are oblivious to what's going on around them, and they might have forgotten what the expectation is in a given environment. And so see if you can make eye contact, have a pleasant look on your face, smile, and see if you can get a smile back from them, and then make your request.
All right. I'll practice that one today.
Practice it today. But then, they're not always going to respond. So if you don't get a response to your request, then the next thing this is what I used to do with my kids, is if I wanted them to do something, I would put my hand on their shoulder and gently guide them towards what it was that I wanted them to do. So let's say I've asked them, I've smiled at them, and I've asked them to pick up their toys, but they're not doing that. So then the next thing I would do is put my hand on their shoulder and gently guide them towards where it is that I want them to move. And once again, explain and maybe offer to help, whatever it is that you're wanting them to do. And in my home, at least, that worked really well when my children were young. And usually did not require anything beyond that. Sometimes what can actually be helpful is playfulness And I'm not a very playful person, but my husband is playful. And so he would sometimes use this. He would say, you've asked them to, let's say, brush their teeth, and you've got no response. He would sometimes say, well, I'll brush my teeth first and then it's your turn. Let's see who can be done, who can be done first.
Mm-hmm.
So playfulness can be another way of gently guiding them towards the behavior that you want.
Yeah, that's a very nice one.
But then once again, so you've got a couple steps that you've taken, and then if you've got no response, then sadly communicate the consequence for, them not complying. So, if you don't pick up your toys now, if you don't brush your teeth, then we won't have time for a story before bedtime. Mm-hmm. So that they know that their misbehavior actually comes with a consequence at the end.
And what about that idea? Because a lot of Christian parents, in reading, particularly the book of Proverbs, that's that idea of spoil the rod, spare the rod, spoil the child thing.
Yeah.
Well, what's your take on that? Is there a place in Christian education for these more like physical consequences to children's misbehavior? How do you see this?
Yeah. So this is a big question in Christian parenting. My take on this is often when we use physical force, it's because we don't know what else to do. And really, anybody can hit a child, meaning it doesn't take any intelligence to hit a child. But if you think carefully through your options, you will usually come up with a better alternative. And the way I think of the rod, if you think about a shepherd's rod, as opposed to a beating rod, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
The shepherd used a rod to guide the sheep. In ancient times, that's what the rod was for guiding sheep, not for beating them. And so, any imbecile can hit. It takes a lot more patience and kindness and gentleness and reflection to do something other than hit. And I actually experienced this as a very young parent. I remember reading that, if your child misbehaves, if let's say you've said, don't touch this, and they touch, then you should smack their hand. So I was like, okay, I will try that. So my child reached out to touch something that I had said no, and I smacked her hand. And she looked at me, and she reached out again. So I smacked her hand harder, and she started to laugh, and she reached out again. And so what I realized in that moment is how hard am I going to have to smack this child to avoid her misbehaving? I'm going to have to figure out something different here because this is not working. And then I remember later when she was a little older, one time smacking her and realized I'd smacked her because I was angry. And if you all of the Christian literature on smacking says, never smack your child in anger. But most parents who smack their children do so in anger. And if you can manage your anger, you can usually figure out an alternative. So that's my take on smacking.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Edyta. This is very interesting. Great counseling on parenting, I believe, from your experience. Is there any resource that you could direct parents to if they want to learn more about this? Any perhaps books or anything that you find can be helpful?
Oh, there are so many books on parenting at the moment. I don't know if there's one in particular. I have read just one recently. I'm so sorry, I forget the name of it. But the big idea was, I know, hold on to your kids.
Okay.
Hold on to your kids. Yeah. And the big idea of that book was really that attachment is everything. And, my kids are grown now. My kids are 27 and 25. And as I've continued to be part of their lives, what I realize is even in adulthood, my attachment to them is everything. Because of my attachment to them, I still have a voice into their lives. Rather than using force or coercion of some kind to try to, force my will upon them, I can still speak into their lives because they're attached to me. So that would be my number one.
Hold on to your kids. Edyta, thank you so much for your time today.